Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to the episode. Today, I want to talk about something that we are all looking to have more of, even though it might sound a little counterintuitive. If you pause for a minute and just reflect, what is it that I need more of in my life? Now, I know what's going to come to your brain. Time, sleep, money, peace in the world, right? Those may all be perfectly lovely, important things in your life, but I would argue that what most of us actually need more of in our life is connection, to feel connected. Now, we as physicians are trained in how to help our patients feel more connected to their healthcare, to the experience, to feel like we are sitting in the room with them, very present and listening. I'll say practice that to various levels. You might be in a specialty where your visits with patients are very quick, right? And there's a high turnover. And your magic is going to be, how do I, help sort of move through this very quickly, and help that patient feel, that they got what they needed. Others of you may practice a specialty where there's more longitudinal relationships, where we spend more time with people. And we know that we are managing a long-term relationship. In primary care, I would say, this is kind of a dying thing. There's been a very interesting series in New England Journal this year about sort of the death of primary care. That's a whole thing. I'm not going to jump into that. But it has to do with patients being less connected to a primary care physician, to a human, a care team, and much more sort of getting sort of one-off algorithmic checkbox kind of care, because that's what the system is like these days. In that, right, how many of us are struggling to feel the emotion of connected? You may be in a system that works perfectly well. If you are, please let me know, because I'm very curious about that. You may be swimming in the soup with the rest of us, in this broken healthcare system. You may be in a direct care practice. You may be insurance-based, right? Wherever we are all experiencing different challenges in helping to, engage patients and have them feel connected. But I would argue that what is missing from the equation, and a part of the secret sauce for so many, is a feeling of the healthcare provider, no matter what your role is, but, including and especially physicians, because that's what we talk about, to feel connected to other humans. We don't necessarily need to get that connection, that feeling of being connected from our patients. And we don't need to get into that and really belabor it. But as we are wrapping up our 10-week challenge, what I want for us to focus on this week is, how do I feel more connected in my day-to-day? How can I practice micro moments of connection? And what would that look like? What would it bring to my life? For so many physicians that I talk to, and I've definitely 100% been in this myself, we are surrounded by people all day long. You are surrounded by patients, staff, maybe your family, and you could very easily move through that with zero feeling of connectedness, right? You may feel frustrated, overwhelmed, exhausted. You might be delighted and joyful at times, or amused or numbed, right? But the feeling of connection is so important to us as humans. We are wired for it, as Brene Brown says, that we are wired for connection. We cannot undo that. Side note, she mentions this fairly often in books and in talks, where people always ask her, well, what about psychopaths? What about people, different intense psychiatric disorders who are maybe not so hardwired for connection. And she's always like, yep, that's the exception. So let's just forget the extremes here. We're going to focus on how can I feel more connected in my day to day, right? That is our goal this week. So I want you to stop for just a minute. If you are able to close your eyes, if you're able to pause for a minute, and that is safe, right? We're not driving right now. I want you to pause for just a second and reflect on a time where you felt the emotion of feeling connected, right? There was a moment of connection, right? I'm going to use those words sort of interchangeably, right? There's the emotion connected, and there is connection, right? Which is the experience between two people, perhaps, or a practice of connection. When was a time that you felt very connected? That might be connected to another human. It might be connected to a cause or a passion of some kind. It could be personal, professional, doesn't matter. It could be that you felt very connected to yourself. I want you to stop and just think, what did that feel like? What did it feel like in my body? What were the sentences going through my brain? What does that feeling of connected look like for me? That is what we are trying to do. Now, we are trying to find little intentional ways to reduce stress. This is week 9 of our 10-week stress reduction challenge. We're almost at the end, folks. We're getting really close. And this week, we're trying to figure out, how can I feel more connected? So put yourself in that place. Give yourself a few moments to think, what does that connected feeling look like for me? What does it feel like? Is it associated? I'm going to overuse the word connection. Is it associated with sensations that you can identify in your body? Is it associated with thoughts? Right? Of course, it's associated with thoughts because that's where our emotions come from. But can you identify those thoughts? Are there thoughts that you've had over and over again that you are conscious of, that you can put together with the feeling of connectedness? It might be, for example, that you've been in a room of humans, maybe family, maybe colleagues, maybe a one-on-one with your best friend, and you felt just very connected. You felt very maybe alive, maybe seen, maybe validated in some way. What would you put in that bucket, right? What does that feel like? When you have that, let's think, what is a small version of that I could practice? I was getting ready for recording, and I just checked in with my kids. My kids are 10 and 13 right now. And I was like, what does connection feel like to you? Like, when do you experience that feeling of connected? And of course, the things that I got were like, well, when we go out and do, something fun, because sometimes, right, we'll take the kids out like one-on-one, and have some special time with them. Of course, they love that because there's usually, fun stuff ensuing. But, of course, they also mention smaller moments like having meals together, playing games together. And I agree. And I can also identify versions of those specific activities where I didn't feel connected, and they probably didn't either. But we're focusing in on like, okay, for the meals or the game nights, right, where we did feel connected, what was going on, right? And I can tell you for me, what was going on is I wasn't thinking about trying to be somewhere else. I was, enjoying listening to the giggles, in particular from my youngest, because just will get on a super giggly phase and just not be able to do anything. Most of our games that we play are card games, right? So there's something silly or funny to read out loud, and we'll just be rolling around in peals of laughter, usually having to do with some kind of bodily fluid or farting, right? Because that's just that's the phase we're in right now. But when I am present, when I am not thinking about other things that I need to be doing, when I am tuning into that full body laughter and just, allowing myself to feel delight, I feel very connected to them, right? And there, again, are other times where we might sit down to play a game. My head is somewhere else. Maybe I'm frustrated because something else happened. I'm just not there. and I'm not appreciating, if they're laughing. And I think we can probably all think of times in various buckets of our life where we are there, but we are absolutely not present. We are absolutely not connected to people or things around us. So, how can we start to practice, right? Being very connected. It includes presence. I can't think of a single episode, for lack of a better word. I can't think of a single time in my life where I might feel connected, but I'm not present. I suppose there might be a thing where I might be feeling very connected to a cause. No, I still have to be present, right? I'd still have to be in the moment. I'd still have to be focused on appreciating that thing. Prove me wrong. Feel free to call me up and tell me otherwise. But it includes presence. It includes appreciation. It includes feeling that you are present and the other person is, sort of in community with you. Now, one thing we are going to talk about is feeling committed to, or sorry, not committed to, but connected to, maybe a cause, maybe a passion, maybe a practice of some kind. If that is the case, right, then we're not thinking necessarily about the connection from another person, but we might be feeling, I am very committed to this thing, and that helps me feel connected to a network of people who also, are passionate about this thing, or I can see how my role connects me with the cause, right? There might be something that you do where you are very aware of your contribution to that thing or your practice of that thing, and that has you feeling connection. Let's talk too about feeling connected to ourselves. So if we put aside other people, if we put aside inanimate things that we might be connected to, a cause, a passion, when was the last time that you felt really connected to yourself? It might be recent. It might be remote. Feeling disengaged, feeling a lack of connection, right? And a desire for it and not being able to access it, right? These are all very real things that I hear from people all the time. I feel numb. I don't feel like I know who I am anymore. I don't feel like myself. I don't know why I went into medicine. I don't feel like the person that I was when I chose this path, right? These are all very common phrases that people will say. And, at least part of what is going on is feeling a lack of connection to themselves. Now, there is more than that in there, but part of the work may be connecting back to those parts of ourselves that, feel so strained. So think about that as well of how do I feel connection with myself? When I'm feeling connected to myself, what is going on? Am I very present with my thoughts? Am I living in my values? Am I, feeling loving thoughts towards myself, right? Is my self-talk kind? Is it compassionate? We talk a lot about how to practice self-compassion on this show. We reference Kristen Neff and her amazing work on self-kindness, right? It includes how we talk to ourselves. It includes recognizing you're going through a hard time right now, and anybody might feel this way, right? It's normal to feel this way, that common humanity part, right? All of these elements need to be there to feel connected to ourselves. If we are constantly just listening to negative voices in our head, we aren't going to feel connected, right? Because we don't feel connected to that negativity, that judgment that we're throwing at ourselves, right? So you can see how there are so many different little layers to this. And what are we going to focus on this week? If you are feeling that it is too challenging to feel connected to myself or, even connected to some of the other humans, if that feels really beyond you, that is a sign that you're going to need some more help and support. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you, but you are just in a place right now where you need someone else to help guide you through this work so that you can be safe and supported and get the help that you need. There is no judgment here, right? That can be working with a therapist, a coach. It can be reaching out to your primary care physician. It can be working with a psychiatrist or other mental health practitioner, right? You deserve that support, my friends. And please don't ever believe otherwise. If you are not in that place where it just feels so beyond you, and maybe you are just looking to feel more connected, right? Let's think about what we're actually going to do this week. What are ways that you can practice connection and feel more connected to some other humans this week? That might be, I want to feel really connected to my family. We are recording this right now. It is the week before Christmas. Hanukkah, I think, has just wrapped up, right? There are lots of these important winter holidays that tend to be about family and loved ones, right? If you're right in the middle of that, then how do you want to feel connected during those times? Do you need to put down the chores and the to-do? Do you need to pick, this is good enough. I'm going to focus on just being present with my humans, right? Then do that. We need to let go of the to-dos that override our ability to feel connected. There is an ever growing and never ending list, right, of potential to-dos. That's true for you at work. It is also true for you at home and probably just about any other space that you exist in. We are very good at finding tasks and things that need to be done. There are some things, of course, that we will need to do. Yes, we need to be able to eat, right? We need to be able to sleep. We are assuming that those very basic needs, we are assuming that no one is bleeding out in front of us, okay? Right? That is something that might happen in your life. That might be something that happens a lot in your life, or something that never happens in your life, depending on what you do. But for right now, we are putting those moments aside. We are saying that nobody is bleeding out in front of us. We are saying that, yep, our basic needs have been met. How do I practice feeling connected with other humans? I'm going to have to remind myself to be present. I'm going to need to perhaps really sit and face devices down, right? Look somebody in the eyes, try to understand and appreciate the words that they're saying or the interaction that we're having. It might be physical touch, right? You might be holding a young child or hugging a partner or a friend, right? Being really present in that connection, right? It's so easy to be performative there. We have lots and lots and lots of practice at this point in our lives in being performative. How do I pause and feel the connection, right? If I'm giving my mom a hug, how can I be really present in that moment so that the hug does me and her benefit? Now, of course, I don't control whether my mom feels connection or not. I only can control what I am choosing to practice in the moment and allow for myself. That is true. I can't force my kids to feel connected. I can only choose to be present and allow the emotion in me, and they can see that and choose to be there, right? We can all, if you are a parent or, a fur baby parent, right, you can probably recognize moments where someone or something was feeling, not something, but some living thing was feeling connected, and maybe you didn't feel connected. I can definitely appreciate times where my kids might have been feeling very connected and I was not in that space to be able to feel it. I can also recognize times where things were really hard. And even though they were hard, I did remember to pause and try and feel the connectedness, even though it was hard. What comes to mind is all the nights that I spent with a baby sleeping on me, a baby who would not go to sleep otherwise. And I was so tired, my friends, so unbelievably tired, not sleeping well because it's hard to sleep with a baby on you night after night and a lot of nights on the floor. But I also remember being very intentional, knowing that that would not last forever. I could be so tired and I could say that it was so hard, and I could still fully appreciate that connected feeling with this tiny human who felt so much comfort that I was the only place for them to sleep. I was able to appreciate that. My friends, I would not go back to that time. And yet I do relish that feeling, right? Because that feeling was very important, right? That feeling keeps us going. Think about for yourself this week with what you know you have going on. How could you choose to feel more connected to other humans? If, I don't know, you are not in a place where you want to or have other humans that you are going to choose to feel connected to, perhaps you've got a busy work week, perhaps, I don't know, there's things going on in your life and you're like, I am not going to lean into that, but there's a cause or a practice or a passion, right, that helps you to feel connected, right? How are you going to choose to practice that this week? It might be, that you intentionally focus on that thing, that you contribute towards that thing. Maybe you're very activated to help combat hunger in your community, right? And so you're going to figure out, how do I make sure that I'm contributing to the fight against hunger in my community, as many times as possible this week? I'm going to contribute to the food bank. I'm going to show up at a soup kitchen. Whatever those things are, we are doing that intentionally to feel more connected to whatever that practice or passion is, right? We're doing that on purpose this week. If you have been feeling like, what I really need right now is to choose to have more moments of connection to myself, how will you choose to do that? What has been helpful? What might be helpful? What are you willing to try? Are you going to sit and, do some form of meditation or journaling or something that helps you to connect with your brain and sort of let it out, right? That might be one thing. You might be someone who chooses to do, what we'll call a movie meditation, right? We talked about rhythmic movement and the ability to just be connected with your thoughts. That is a movement practice, right? That helps you to actually feel more connected to yourself, even though we didn't name it as such, right? So what will you do? So you don't have to pick all of these things, but I want you to just identify, what would I benefit from feeling more connected with this week? Is it other humans in your life? Is it a cause or a passion that you feel like, it just really calls to you and you want to practice that more intentionally? Is it feeling more connected to yourself? So identify which of those things is important to you. If you've got a blank slate this week and you've got lots of time and energy, you might choose to do all three. I'm not your mom. You decide what you have capacity for. But after you figure out, yep, I want to feel more connected to the humans, or I want to feel more connected to myself, what will you choose to do? When will you choose to do it? You might be able to have a specific time, like it's really important that I'm going to sit down and connect with myself for a few minutes before I go to bed, or a few minutes after I wake up in the morning, or, when I'm sitting in my car before I go into the clinic or the hospital, right? Those might be moments where you choose to practice. You might choose to practice it not connected to a specific time of day or activity, but with some other anchor, right? I'm going to choose to pause in between patients. I'm going to, when we get together for, whatever the holiday party, I'm going to choose to connect one-on-one with several people that I don't know very well, and I'm going to get to know them a little bit, right? It can be small. It can be little things, but I want you to really think about that feeling, the emotion of feeling connected. How do I create more of that for myself? It is so common when we are doing work around burnout that it is so easy to just want steps. We just want a checklist. We just want to have like boom, boom, boom. If I get my notes done, if I do this, if I exercise more, right, everything will be fine and I won't feel burned out anymore. But it's like, what, we're really going to have to identify, what are the feelings? What are the emotions that we are lacking? How do we intentionally get more of those into our lives, right? Sometimes it's very drilled down and a little bit mechanical, and sort of thinking, how do I create more of that? Because sometimes we need a lot of help and support to get there. You are not alone. If you're like, I definitely need that. None of us got any training on this, right? And it's so important. But for this week, for week 9 of our 10-week stress reduction challenge, it's all about connection. How do I choose to feel more connected this week? My friends, that is what I have for you. I'm going to turn off the record. I'm going to go and practice connection with my family. It is gingerbread house afternoon. I've got some cookies to decorate. I'm going to choose to go and be present with my family. I wish good things for you and yours. And until next week, take care. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.